You come from nothing. Your father drives a bus. You have no connections, no breeding, no future that aligns with the Wellington name.
They said she wasn't good enough for their son.
Girls like you don't end up with boys like Darius. That's just reality, dear.
She believed in love. She believed that if two people cared about each other, nothing else mattered. But while she was busy loving their son, they were busy replacing her. £200,000. That's what they thought she was worth. That's what they paid to make her disappear. The woman they paid to leave? She took their money. She took their cruelty. She took their betrayal. And she turned it into something they never saw coming.
Kendra Pierce's hands trembled as she stared at the check on the mahogany table. £200,000. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. The paper seemed to glow under the crystal chandelier of the Wellington family's Manchester estate. "Take it," Preston Wellington said, his voice cold as the marble floors beneath her feet. "Take the money and disappear from our son's life." Kendra looked up at the man sitting across from her, silver hair perfectly styled, pale skin showing barely a wrinkle despite his 60 years, wearing a burgundy smoking jacket like he'd stepped out of a period drama. His gray eyes held nothing but contempt. Beside him sat Victoria Wellington, Darius's mother. She wore pearls and a cream cashmere sweater, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. She hadn't spoken a word since Kendra had been summoned to this room, but her thin lips pressed together in obvious disgust said everything. "I don't understand," Kendra said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Darius and I." "Darius is confused," Victoria finally spoke, her British accent dripping with disdain. "You're his phase, his little American adventure, but it's time for him to return to reality." "Reality," Kendra repeated, feeling something crack inside her chest. Preston leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. "Miss Pierce, let me be frank. You are not suitable for this family. You come from nothing. Your father drives a bus in Philadelphia. Your mother works in a grocery store. You have no connections, no pedigree, no future that aligns with the Wellington name." Each word hit Kendra like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of her chair to steady herself. "I love your son," Kendra said, adding how her voice shook, "and he loves me." "Love," Victoria scoffed, actually laughing. "How charmingly naive. Darius will marry someone appropriate, someone from our world. You dear girl are simply not good enough." Not good enough. The words echoed in Kendra's mind as she sat in that grand room, surrounded by oil paintings of Wellington ancestors looking down at her with the same judgment as the two people across the table. £200,000, Preston repeated, tapping the check. "That's more than you'd make in 5 years at whatever little job you're doing. Take it. Leave Manchester. Leave England. Go back to America and build whatever life you can. Sign the agreement and this money is yours." Kendra looked at the papers beside the check. A non-disclosure agreement. A contract promising she'd never contact Darius again, never speak about the Wellington family, never return to Manchester. "Does Darius know you're doing this?" Kendra asked. "Darius is in London on business," Preston said smoothly. "But yes, we've discussed it. He understands that this relationship must end. He's simply too conflict-averse to do it himself. We're doing him a favor. And we're doing you one too, giving you a fresh start with substantial capital." Kendra felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of these people. You're paying me to break his heart." "We're paying you to face reality," Victoria said sharply. "You were always temporary, Miss Pierce. Surely you knew that. Girls like you don't end up with boys like Darius. That's just how the world works." "Girls like you." Kendra thought about the past 18 months, meeting Darius at a university networking event when she'd been doing her master's program in international business. The way he'd looked at her across the room like she was the only person there. Their first date at a small Italian restaurant in the Northern Quarter. The way he'd held her hand as they walked through Heaton Park. The night he'd told her he loved her, his brown eyes so sincere, so certain. She'd moved to Manchester for him, given up a job opportunity in New York, signed a lease on a tiny flat in Levenshulme because it was all she could afford, spent her savings trying to look presentable at Wellington family events where everyone else wore designer labels while she shopped at Primark. And all that time, his parents had been watching, judging, planning this moment. "I need to talk to Darius," Kendra said, reaching for her phone. "He won't answer," Preston said calmly. "We've made sure of that. He's in meetings all day. By the time he surfaces, you'll be gone and this unfortunate chapter will be closed." "You can't make me leave." "No," Victoria agreed. "But we can make your life in Manchester very uncomfortable. My husband sits on the boards of several major companies. I chair multiple social organizations. One word from us, and you'll find yourself unemployable in this city. Is that really how you want to spend your 20s? Struggling in a country that's not your home, clinging to a man whose family will never accept you?" Kendra stared at the check again. £200,000. She could go home, pay off her student loans, help her parents start over. But it would mean giving up Darius, giving up the life they talked about building together, giving up on love because his parents had decided she wasn't worthy. "I won't do it," Kendra said, pushing the check back across the table. "I won't take your money and I won't leave. Darius gets to make his own choices." Preston's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Kendra said, standing up on shaking legs, "but it's my mistake to make." She turned to leave the study, desperate to get out of this house with its suffocating wealth and crushing judgment. "Miss Pierce," Victoria called after her, "before you go, you should know something." Kendra stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "Darius has been seeing Sloane Ashford for the past 3 months, reacquainting himself with her, shall we say. Sloane comes from a very good family, old money, impeccable breeding. They've known each other since childhood. She's everything you're not." Now Kendra did turn around. "You're lying." Victoria smiled, and it was the cruelest expression Kendra had ever seen. "Am I? Check his phone if you don't believe me. Check his calendar. All those late meetings in London. He's been having dinner with Sloane. We introduced them, of course. We knew this relationship needed to end, so we simply provided an alternative." Kendra felt the room tilt. Darius wouldn't. "Darius would do exactly what we raised him to do," Preston interrupted. "He's a Wellington. We've been grooming him his entire life to take over Wellington Holdings. That means making the right choices, marrying the right person, living the right life. You were never part of that plan." Kendra's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling hands. A text from Darius. "Sorry, babe, stuck in meetings all day. Dinner tonight, miss you." Below it, another notification. An Instagram post she'd been tagged in by someone she didn't know. She opened it. The photo showed Darius at an upscale London restaurant, sitting across from a stunning blonde woman in a designer dress. They were laughing, leaning close together. The caption read, "So happy to see Dee and Sloane back together. Some couples are just meant to be. Childhood sweethearts, London life couple goals." The post was dated 2 nights ago, the night Darius had told Kendra he was too exhausted from work to video chat. "Still want to refuse the money?" Preston asked quietly. Kendra looked at the photo, then at the Wellington sitting there watching her world crumble with satisfied expressions. She walked back to the table, picked up the pen, and signed the non-disclosure agreement. She took the check, and she left the Wellington estate without looking back. But what Kendra didn't know as she walked out of that mansion with tears streaming down her face and a check burning a hole in her purse was this. Preston and Victoria Wellington had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had humiliated the wrong woman, and soon they would realize exactly how costly that mistake would be. Before we continue with Kendra's heartbreak journey, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to leave you speechless. Drop a comment telling me what you do with that money, leave or stay. Now, let's see what Kendra does next. Kendra sat in her tiny flat in Levenshulme, the check spread on her second-hand coffee table. Her best friend Tasha Campbell sat beside her on the worn couch, one arm around Kendra's shoulders. "I can't believe they did this," Tasha said, her dark brown skin flushed with anger. Tasha was from Brooklyn, and she'd moved to Manchester for a job in marketing 2 years earlier. She'd been Kendra's first real friend in the city, and right now, she looked ready to commit violence on Kendra's behalf. "I can't believe Darius did this," Kendra whispered, looking at the Instagram post again on her phone. She'd scrolled through the woman's profile: Sloane Ashford, old money, boarding school education, debutante, everything Kendra wasn't. "Have you talked to him? He keeps texting like nothing's wrong, asking about dinner tonight, acting like," Kendra's voice broke, "acting like he's not cheating on me. What are you going to do?" Kendra looked at the check. £200,000, blood money, shame money, money meant to erase her from Darius Wellington's life like she'd never existed. "I'm going to take it," Kendra said slowly, "but not for the reasons they think." Tasha pulled back to look at her friend. "What do you mean?" "They called me not good enough," Kendra said, and for the first time since leaving the Wellington estate, she felt something other than pain. She felt anger, cold, clarifying anger. "They said girls like me don't end up with boys like Darius, that I have no future that aligns with their precious name. They're classist assholes." "They're right about one thing," Kendra interrupted. "I don't have a future with Darius, not because I'm not good enough, but because he's not good enough for me. Any man who lets his parents pay off his girlfriend is trash." "So what's the plan?" Kendra picked up the check, holding it up to the light from her window. "The plan is I'm going to take their money. I'm going to leave Manchester like they want. But I'm not going back to Philadelphia to work some entry-level job and fade into obscurity." "Then what?" "I'm going to build an empire," Kendra said, and even though her eyes were still red from crying, her voice was steady. "I'm going to become exactly what they said I could never be. And someday, somehow, the Wellingtons are going to realize they didn't pay me to go away. They paid for their own destruction." Tasha stared at her friend, then slowly smiled. "Now that's the Kendra I know, so where do we start?" "Wait. You think I'm letting you do this alone?" Tasha laughed. "Girl, my job here is boring anyway. Let's go build that empire." The next morning, Kendra met Darius at a coffee shop in Spinningfields. He looked perfect as always, brown skin glowing, hair freshly cut, wearing an expensive navy suit that probably cost more than Kendra's monthly rent. "Hey babe," he said, leaning in to kiss her. Kendra turned her head so his lips hit her cheek instead. "We need to talk." Darius's smile faltered. "That sounds ominous. What's wrong?" Kendra pulled out her phone and showed him the Instagram post of him and Sloane. "Want to explain this?" The color drained from Darius's face. "Kendra, that's not what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you've been having romantic dinners with your ex while lying to me about being in meetings." "Sloane is just a friend. Our parents set up a business dinner. It didn't mean anything." "Your parents," Kendra repeated flatly. "The same parents who offered me £200,000 to leave you yesterday." Darius froze. "What?" "Oh, you didn't know." Kendra pulled the check from her purse, laid it on the table between them. "Your father and mother invited me to your family home, told me I wasn't good enough for the Wellington name, told me girls like me don't end up with boys like you, and then they offered me this to disappear." Darius stared at the check, his mouth opening and closing. "I didn't. I had no idea they would." "Didn't you? You've been pulling away for months, Darius. All those late meetings, all those times you were too tired to see me. Meanwhile, your parents were setting you up with someone more appropriate." "Kendra, I love you." "No, you don't," Kendra said, and she was surprised by how calm she felt. "You love the idea of rebelling against your parents. You love having an exotic American girlfriend to show off to your friends. But when it came down to choosing between me and your family's approval, you chose them. You've been choosing them all along." "That's not fair." "You know what's not fair? I gave up a job in New York for you. I moved to a country where I don't have family, don't have connections, don't have anything except you. And you couldn't even be bothered to tell your parents to back off. You let them treat me like trash while you played both sides." Darius reached for her hand. "Don't do this. We can work through it. I'll talk to my parents." "Too late," Kendra said, pulling her hand away. She stood up from the table. "I'm leaving Manchester. I'm going to cash this check. And I'm going to forget I ever met Darius Wellington." "Kendra, please." "Goodbye, Darius." She walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him sitting there with the check on the table. She didn't look back. She didn't cry. She just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, toward whatever future she was going to build from the ashes of this humiliation. 1 week later, Kendra Pierce boarded a flight, but she didn't fly to Philadelphia. She flew to London. She'd spent the week doing research, making calls, setting up meetings. The £200,000 wasn't revenge money anymore. It was seed capital. Tasha met her at Heathrow Airport, having flown in from Manchester with both their belongings packed into suitcases. "You really think this is going to work?" Tasha asked as they loaded their bags into a rental car. "It has to," Kendra said, "because I'm not going to let the Wellingtons be right about me. I'm not going to be the girl who wasn't good enough. I'm going to be the woman they wish they'd never underestimated." "So what's step 1 of this master plan?" Kendra pulled out a folder from her carry-on bag. Inside were business proposals, market research, investor contact information. She'd barely slept all week, working around the clock to turn her humiliation into motivation. "Step 1, Kendra said, is we stop thinking small. The Wellingtons think I'm just some poor American girl who got lucky dadding their son. They have no idea what I'm actually capable of." "And what are you capable of?" Kendra smiled, and it was the first real smile she'd managed since sitting in Preston Wellington's study. "We're about to find out." Kendra's plan was ambitious, maybe even crazy. She'd gotten her master's degree in international business, specializing in corporate restructuring and investment. During her time in Manchester, she'd networked extensively, attending every industry event she could afford, collecting business cards, making connections. Now she was going to use all of it. Her first stop was a meeting with Malcolm Porter, a Black American venture capitalist she'd met at a conference 6 months earlier. Malcolm was in his 50s, originally from Chicago, and had built his fortune by identifying promising startups and helping them scale. They met at his office in Canary Wharf, all glass and steel overlooking the Thames. "Kendra Pierce," Malcolm said, shaking her hand with a firm grip. He was a tall man with dark brown skin starting to show gray at his temples, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. "I was surprised to get your call. Last time we talked, you were happily settled in Manchester." "Things changed," Kendra said simply, sitting across from his desk. "They usually do." Malcolm leaned back in his chair, studying her. "So what brings you to London? Your message said you had a business proposition." Kendra opened her laptop and pulled up the presentation she'd been working on obsessively. "I want to start an investment firm focused on minority-owned businesses in the UK. Specifically, businesses run by immigrants and first-generation entrepreneurs who are systematically overlooked by traditional venture capital." Malcolm's eyebrows rose. "That's ambitious." "I know the market," Kendra continued. "I've spent the last year and a half in Manchester studying it. There are hundreds of talented business owners, African, Caribbean, South Asian, Eastern European, who can't get funding because they don't fit the profile of what British investors think success looks like. They don't have the right connections or backgrounds. And you think you can change that? I think there's money to be made by investing in people that everyone else is ignoring. And I think I can build relationships with communities that traditional firms can't access." Malcolm was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. "You know, when I first came to the UK 20 years ago, I had almost this exact same idea, but I was told it wasn't viable, that the market was too niche." "What changed?" "I stopped asking for permission and just did it anyway, made my first million within 3 years." He looked at her presentation on the screen. "How much capital are you working with?" £200,000 to start." "That's not enough." "I know, that's why I'm here. I need a partner. Someone with experience, connections, and credibility. Someone who believes in what I'm trying to do. And what do I get out of this? 49% of the company. I maintain controlling interest, but you get access to a pipeline of high-potential businesses that you'd never see otherwise. And you get to invest in something that actually matters, leveling a playing field that's been rigged for centuries. Malcolm studied her for a long moment. Where did you get the capital? Kendra hesitated, then decided on honesty. I was paid to leave Manchester, to leave someone's life, by his family. They thought I wasn't good enough for their world. And now you're going to prove them wrong. No, Kendra corrected. I'm going to prove them irrelevant. I don't care what they think anymore. I care about building something real. Malcolm laughed, a deep, genuine sound. I like you, Kendra Pierce. You've got fire. Tell you what, I'll put in $200,000 to match your investment. We'll start with £400,000 and see what we can build. But I want one condition. What's that? We do this right. No shortcuts, no revenge plots, no letting personal feelings cloud business judgment. If we're going to build something real, it has to be based on solid fundamentals, not just anger. Kendra extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Pierce Porter Investments was born. The first year was brutal. Kendra and Tasha worked 18-hour days from a small office in Shoreditch. They sourced deals, met with potential clients, pitched investors, built spreadsheets until their eyes crossed. Tasha had transitioned from marketing into operations, handling the day-to-day logistics while Kendra focused on deal-making and investor relations. Malcolm provided guidance, connections, and occasionally, tough love when Kendra got too ambitious too fast. You're trying to save the world, Malcolm told her after she proposed taking on 6 new clients when they could barely handle 3. That's admirable, but it's also how you burn out and fail. Focus on doing a few things excellently rather than many things adequately. Kendra learned to listen. She learned to be patient. She learned that building real success took time and discipline. Their first major win came 8 months in. They'd invested in a Nigerian woman named Adiz who ran a beauty supply company. Traditional investors had passed on her because she didn't have enough business experience, which was code for, we don't think someone like her can scale. Kendra saw something different. She saw a woman with deep community connections, an underserved market, and a brilliant mind for logistics. Pierce Porter invested £50,000. Within 6 months, Adiz's company had tripled its revenue. Within a year, they were fielding acquisition offers from major retailers. You saw something everyone else missed, Adiz told Kendra at a celebration dinner after they'd negotiated a deal that would make everyone involved very wealthy. You believed in me when no one else would. I know what it's like to be underestimated, Kendra said. I decided I wasn't going to do that to anyone else. That deal put Pierce Porter Investments on the map. Suddenly, they had credibility. Other investors started paying attention. More entrepreneurs sought them out. Kendra hired a team. She moved the company to a larger office. She started getting invited to industry conferences as a speaker, not just an attendee. And she never, not once, thought about Darius Wellington. Well, that's not quite true. Sometimes late at night, when she was working on a particularly difficult deal or facing a setback, she'd remember sitting in Preston Wellington's study being told she wasn't good enough. And then she'd work harder. 3 years after leaving Manchester, Kendra Pierce stood on stage at a major UK business conference, giving a keynote speech about inclusive investing. She wore a tailored emerald blazer and black slacks, her natural hair styled in elegant twists. She spoke with confidence about building wealth in overlooked communities, about the business case for diversity, about seeing potential where others saw risk. The audience of several hundred investors and entrepreneurs gave her a standing ovation. After the speech, she was surrounded by people wanting to network, to pitch ideas, to get advice. She collected business cards, made connections, and smiled until her face hurt. "Excuse me, Ms. Pierce." Kendra turned to see a young white man in an expensive suit hovering nervously. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. Yes, I'm Elliot Wellington. I think you knew my brother Darius. Kendra's smile froze on her face. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 3 years. That was a long time ago, she said carefully. I know, I wanted to apologize for my family, for how they treated you. Elliot looked genuinely uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I was at university then, wasn't around much, but I heard what happened. It was wrong. Thank you, Kendra said, unsure what else to say. And also, Elliot hesitated, I was wondering if you'd be interested in a business meeting with my father. He'd like to discuss a potential opportunity with Pierce Porter Investments. Now Kendra understood. Preston Wellington wanted something from her. The man who'd paid her to disappear now needed her expertise. What kind of opportunity? She asked, keeping her voice neutral. Wellington Holdings has been struggling. We've made some bad investments, missed some market shifts. My father is looking for a turnaround specialist, someone who can restructure the company and restore profitability. Your name keeps coming up in those conversations. Kendra felt a strange sensation in her chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite anger, something in between. Tell your father to send me a formal proposal, she said. My assistant will schedule something if it looks promising. Thank you, Ms. Pierce, really. Elliot walked away, and Kendra stood there in the conference hall, people milling around her, trying to process what had just happened. The Wellingtons needed her. Preston Wellington, who'd called her not good enough, was about to ask for her help. And Kendra Pierce, the girl from Philadelphia who'd once cried in a tiny Manchester flat over a check meant to erase her, was the one with all the power now. She pulled out her phone and texted Tasha, "You're not going to believe what just happened." The game is about to change. Kendra is about to walk back into the Wellingtons' world, but this time, she's the one calling the shots. If you're invested in this story, smash that like button right now. Comment below what you think Kendra should do, help them or watch them fall. Let's continue the story. Kendra sat in the conference room of Pierce Porter Investments' London office, staring at the formal proposal that had arrived by courier that morning. The Wellington Holdings logo stared back at her from the top of the page, elegant, traditional, dripping with old money prestige. The company was in trouble, bad trouble. According to the financial documents Preston Wellington had included, Wellington Holdings had lost 30% of its value over the past 2 years. Bad investments in failing retail chains, mismanaged real estate deals, a reputation for being out of touch with modern markets. They needed restructuring. They needed fresh perspective. They needed someone who understood how to navigate a changing business landscape. They needed Kendra. This is wild, Tasha said, reading over Kendra's shoulder. Tasha had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer of Pierce Porter Investments, and she looked the part in her burgundy blazer and designer glasses. Preston Wellington is literally begging you for help. He's not begging, Kendra corrected. The proposal is very carefully worded to make it sound like he's doing me a favor by offering this opportunity. Still, the audacity of this man. He pays you to disappear, tells you you're not good enough for his family, and now he wants you to save his company. Malcolm entered the conference room, carrying his usual morning coffee. Are we talking about the Wellington situation? We need to decide if we're taking the meeting, Kendra said. Do you want to take it? Malcolm asked, settling into a chair. That was the question, wasn't it? The logical business answer was yes. Wellington Holdings was a major company. Turning it around would be a huge win for Pierce Porter Investments, would cement their reputation as serious players in the UK market. But the emotional answer. Kendra wasn't sure she could sit across from Preston Wellington without letting 4 years of suppressed anger come flooding out. I don't know, Kendra admitted. Part of me wants to write back and tell him exactly where he can stick his proposal, but part of me wants to take the meeting just to see his face when he has to ask me for help. Those are both valid feelings, Malcolm said. But here's what I'll tell you. Revenge is a terrible business strategy. If you take this meeting, if you take this job, it has to be because you genuinely believe you can add value and get properly compensated for it. Not because you want to stick it to some old man who insulted you once. It wasn't just an insult, Tasha interjected. They paid her like she was an escort they were dismissing. They tried to erase her from their son's life like she was nothing. I know, Malcolm said gently, and that was terrible. But Kendra, you've built something real here. You've proved every single thing they said about you wrong. Don't let them live rent-free in your head anymore. If you take this job, do it for the right reasons. Kendra looked at the proposal again. Wellington Holdings had over 2,000 employees. If the company failed, those people would lose their jobs. And while Preston Wellington deserved whatever karma came his way, those workers didn't. Set up the meeting, Kendra said finally. But make sure they understand they're coming to our office, on our terms. This is a business negotiation, nothing more. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Kendra spent the intervening days preparing obsessively, studying every aspect of Wellington Holdings' financial situation, identifying problems and potential solutions. She dressed carefully that morning, a navy blue power suit with a cream silk blouse, her natural hair styled in a sophisticated updo. She wanted to look successful, confident, completely untouchable. Tasha knocked on her office door at 9:45 a.m. They're here, Preston and Elliot Wellington, no Darius. Kendra felt an unexpected flash of something, relief. Disappointment. She pushed it away. She was over Darius Wellington. She'd been over him for years. Give me 5 minutes, then show them in, Kendra said. Let them wait. It was a petty power move, but it felt good. When Preston and Elliot finally entered her office, Kendra was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking London, projecting an image of success and control. Preston Wellington looked older than she remembered. His silver hair was thinner, his face more lined. He wore an expensive gray suit, but he carried himself with less confidence than he'd had 4 years ago. Mr. Wellington, Kendra said coolly, not offering her hand, please have a seat. Preston's eyes flickered with something, surprise, discomfort. He'd expected the girl he'd dismissed. Instead, he was facing a polished businesswoman in her own successful company. Ms. Pierce, Preston said, settling into the chair across from her desk. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I agreed to review your proposal, Kendra corrected, returning to her chair. I haven't agreed to anything else. Elliot, sitting beside his father, looked distinctly uncomfortable. He was younger than she'd initially thought at the conference, probably mid-20s, with the same refined features as his brother but softer, less arrogant. Right, of course, Preston cleared his throat. I assume you've reviewed the financial documents we sent. I have. Wellington Holdings is in serious trouble. Your portfolio is outdated. Your investment strategy is reactive rather than proactive, and you're hemorrhaging value because you keep trying to operate like it's 1985. Preston's jaw tightened. He clearly wasn't used to being spoken to so directly. That's a rather harsh assessment. It's an accurate assessment, Kendra replied. Your company is failing because you've refused to adapt to changing markets. You've ignored emerging industries, overlooked diverse consumer bases, and maintained an old boys network approach to deal-making that stopped being effective a decade ago. Which is why we're here, Elliot interjected smoothly. We need someone with fresh perspective, someone who understands modern markets and can guide us through a restructuring process. Why me specifically? Kendra asked. There are dozens of restructuring firms in London. Why Pierce Porter Investments? Preston and Elliot exchanged a glance. Finally, Preston spoke. Because you have a reputation for seeing value where others don't, for understanding markets that traditional firms overlook. Wellington Holdings needs that perspective. And Kendra pressed. And Preston continued, clearly forcing the words out. You have a personal understanding of how outdated some traditional thinking can be. Kendra almost laughed. He couldn't even say it. Couldn't admit that his classist, elitist, discriminatory worldview was the exact thinking that had driven his company into the ground. "Let me be clear about something," Kendra said, leaning forward. "4 years ago, you paid me £200,000 to disappear from your son's life. You told me I wasn't good enough for the Wellington name, that girls like me don't end up with boys like Darius." Preston had the decency to look uncomfortable. Miss Pierce, that was. "I'm not finished," Kendra interrupted coldly. "You treated me like garbage, like I was something shameful that needed to be removed. And you know what? You were right about one thing. I wasn't good enough for Darius. Not because I wasn't worthy, but because he was weak. He let you bully the woman he claimed to love. He chose your approval over his own happiness." "Kendra," Elliot started. "But you were wrong about everything else," Kendra continued, her voice steady and hard. "You thought I was just some poor American girl who'd fade into obscurity. Instead, I built this." She gestured to the office around them, to the success that was evident in every detail. "I proved that your money, your connections, your breeding, none of it matters as much as intelligence, work ethic, and vision." Preston was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded slowly. "You're right. About all of it, I was. I made judgments based on outdated prejudices, and I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. I'm here because Wellington Holdings is about to fail, and you're the best person to save it." "Why should I?" Kendra asked. "Why should I help the man who humiliated me?" "Because 2,000 people work for Wellington Holdings," Elliot said quietly. "People who have nothing to do with what happened between you and my family. People who'll lose their jobs if the company goes under. And because despite everything, you're not the kind of person who lets innocent people suffer just to make a point." Kendra looked at Elliot, seeing him clearly for the first time. He was different from Darius, more genuine, less entitled. He actually seemed to care about the employees, about doing the right thing. "What about Darius?" Kendra asked. "Does he work for Wellington Holdings?" "No," Preston said. "After you left Manchester, Darius and I had a falling out. He disagreed with how I handled the situation with you. He's working in Edinburgh now, running a small investment firm. We barely speak." Kendra wasn't sure how to process that information. Part of her felt vindicated. Darius had chosen her in the end, just 4 years too late. Part of her felt nothing at all. That relationship belonged to a different person, a younger Kendra who'd believed that love could overcome anything. "If I take this job," Kendra said slowly, "I'm doing it on my terms. I'll need full access to all financial records, complete authority to make staffing changes, and a seat on the board of directors. Non-negotiable." Preston looked pained, but he nodded. "Agreed. And my fee will be substantial. 20% of the company's increased value over the next 2 years, plus a 7-figure consulting retainer. You're not just paying for my expertise. You're paying for the privilege of accessing it after how you treated me." "That's outrageous," Preston started. "That's the deal," Kendra interrupted. "Take it or leave it. There are other companies that need my help, ones run by people who didn't pay me to disappear." Elliot put a hand on his father's arm. "We'll take it." Preston looked at his younger son, then back at Kendra. She could see the war happening behind his eyes, pride versus necessity. Necessity won. "Fine, we'll take it." Kendra stood, extending her hand. "Then we have a deal. My team will send over the contracts. We'll begin our analysis next week." Preston shook her hand, and Kendra could feel how much it cost him. He was shaking hands with the woman he'd dismissed, now his only hope for salvation. After they left, Tasha came into Kendra's office, closing the door behind her. "Holy shit, you actually did it. You made Preston Wellington beg." "I didn't make him beg," Kendra said, but she was smiling. "I made him pay. There's a difference." "How does it feel?" Kendra thought about it. 4 years ago, she'd cried in a cheap flat in Manchester, feeling worthless and small. Now she was standing in a corner office in London, having just negotiated a deal that would make her one of the most powerful consultants in the UK. "It feels like justice," Kendra said simply. Over the next month, Kendra and her team conducted a comprehensive analysis of Wellington Holdings. What they found was worse than the initial proposal had suggested. The company wasn't just struggling. It was built on a foundation of nepotism, missed opportunities, and willful ignorance of changing markets. "Look at this," Tasha said, pulling up a spreadsheet in their war room. They'd converted an entire floor of their building into workspace for the Wellington project. The senior leadership team, all white men, average age 62. Not a single woman, not a single person of color. No wonder they can't connect with modern consumers. Malcolm was reviewing investment portfolios. They've put millions into dying industries: coal, traditional manufacturing, retail malls. Meanwhile, they've passed on opportunities in tech, renewable energy, and direct-to-consumer brands. It's like they're actively trying to fail. Kendra studied the organizational charts. The nepotism is stunning. Half the management team is related to the Wellingtons or went to school with Preston. Qualifications seem optional. "So what's the play?" Malcolm asked. Kendra pulled up a presentation she'd been working on. "We're going to restructure everything. New leadership team focused on diversity and actual expertise. Divest from failing industries and reinvest in growth sectors. And most importantly, we're going to change the culture from the top down." "Preston's not going to like this," Tasha warned. "Preston doesn't get a vote," Kendra said firmly. "That's what he agreed to. If he wants to save his company, he's going to have to watch me tear it apart and rebuild it in a way that actually works." The presentation to Wellington Holdings Board of Directors was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at their Manchester headquarters. Kendra hadn't been back to Manchester since she'd left 4 years ago. Walking into the Wellington building felt surreal, like stepping back into the past while being a completely different person. The boardroom was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of past Wellington patriarchs, a long table surrounded by leather chairs occupied by older white men in expensive suits. Preston sat at the head of the table. Elliot sat to his right. The rest of the board members looked at Kendra with varying degrees of skepticism. "Gentlemen," Kendra began, standing at the front of the room with her presentation displayed on a large screen. "Thank you for your time today. I'm Kendra Pierce, founder and CEO of Pierce Porter Investments. I'm here to tell you how we're going to save Wellington Holdings from bankruptcy." A few board members shifted uncomfortably at the word bankruptcy. Kendra clicked to her first slide. "The current state of this company is dire. You've lost 30% of your value in 2 years. Your stock price is at an all-time low. You're hemorrhaging talent because no one wants to work for a company that's seen as out of touch and failing." She clicked through slides showing the financial decline, the poor investment choices, the dated business model. "The root problem is clear. Wellington Holdings is operating like it's still 1950. You've relied on old connections, traditional industries, and a belief that your name alone is enough to guarantee success. That era is over. The market has moved on. You haven't." One of the board members, an older man with white hair and a red face, interrupted. "This is all very dramatic, Ms. Pierce, but what exactly are you proposing?" Kendra smiled. "I'm proposing we fire half of you." The room erupted. Board members shouting over each other, Preston calling for order, Elliot looking like he was trying not to laugh. "Gentlemen," Kendra's voice cut through the chaos. "Let me explain. This board represents everything wrong with Wellington Holdings. You're all over 60. You're all white. You're all men. Most of you got your positions through family connections or friendships, not merit. You represent a business philosophy that stopped working decades ago." "This is outrageous," the red-faced man sputtered. "Preston, are you going to let her speak to us this way?" Preston looked at Kendra, and something passed between them. An understanding. He'd given her full authority to do what needed to be done. "Let her finish," Preston said quietly. Kendra continued. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to restructure this board to actually represent the modern world. We're bringing in women. We're bringing in people of color. We're bringing in people under 40 who understand technology and changing consumer behavior. Half of the current board will be asked to resign. You can't do this, another board member protested. Actually, I can, Kendra replied calmly. It's in my contract, and if you resist, I'll make sure every business publication in the UK knows that Wellington Holdings failed because its leadership was too stubborn and too prejudiced to adapt. Is that the legacy you want? The room fell silent. Who stays and who goes will be determined by one thing: competence. I don't care about your last name, where you went to school, or who your father was. I care about whether you can actually contribute to turning this company around. Those who can, stay. Those who can't, leave with a generous severance package. Kendra clicked to her next slide. Beyond the board, we're restructuring the entire leadership team. We're divesting from dying industries and reinvesting in growth sectors. We're implementing diversity initiatives throughout the company. And we're going to rebrand Wellington Holdings as a forward-thinking, inclusive, modern investment firm. She looked directly at Preston. In short, we're taking everything this company used to stand for and throwing it away, because what it used to stand for doesn't work anymore. Preston held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Present the full plan. Show us everything. For the next 2 hours, Kendra walked the board through her comprehensive restructuring strategy. She showed financial projections, outlined new investment opportunities, presented candidates for the new diverse leadership team. Some board members pushed back, others asked thoughtful questions. Elliot took detailed notes and asked about implementation timelines. By the end, even the most skeptical board members couldn't deny the logic of Kendra's plan. It was bold, maybe even radical, but it was also the company's only real chance for survival. We'll vote on the proposal next week, Preston announced. Board members will receive the full documentation for review. After the meeting, as board members filed out looking shell-shocked, Elliot approached Kendra. That was brilliant, he said quietly. Brutal but brilliant. Change is always brutal, Kendra replied, especially for people who have never had to change before. Can I ask you something? Elliot hesitated. Do you hate us, my family? Kendra considered the question honestly. I did for a long time, but now, I don't feel anything toward your family. You're just clients. This is just business. Darius asks about you sometimes, Elliot said. When we do talk, he regrets how things ended. He should, Kendra said simply, but that's not my problem anymore. Kendra is about to transform Wellington Holdings from the inside out, but she has no idea that the Wellingtons are hiding one more secret, one that will change everything. If you're loving this story, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button now, and also give the video a thumbs up. The vote on Kendra's restructuring plan passed 9-3. 3 board members resigned immediately rather than face the changes. Kendra replaced them within a week with a female tech entrepreneur, a black British economist, and a South Asian venture capitalist who specialized in sustainable industries. The transformation of Wellington Holdings began in earnest. Kendra was ruthless. Every department underwent review. Underperforming executives were let go, regardless of their connections to the Wellington family. New talent was brought in, people who actually knew how to navigate 21st century markets. She divested the company from coal investments, shutting retail partnerships and outdated manufacturing. She reinvested in renewable energy, tech startups, and direct-to-consumer brands focused on diverse markets. The business press had a field day. Wellington Holdings undergoes radical transformation under controversial consultant, read one headline. Another, from old money to new vision, how Kendra Pierce is reinventing a British institution. Not everyone was happy. Kendra received angry emails from fired executives, LinkedIn messages accusing her of destroying tradition, and even some thinly veiled threats from people who didn't appreciate an American woman, a black American woman, tearing apart their old boys club. She ignored all of it and kept working. 6 months into the restructuring, Wellington Holdings released its quarterly earnings. For the first time in 3 years, the company showed growth. Not huge growth, but enough to prove that Kendra's strategy was working. The stock price started climbing. Industry analysts began praising the transformation. Job applications to Wellington Holdings surged as word spread that the company was actually a good place to work now. Kendra was exhausted but satisfied. She'd proved beyond any doubt that she knew exactly what she was doing. Then on a rainy Tuesday evening, everything changed. Kendra was working late in her temporary office at Wellington Holdings' Manchester headquarters when Preston knocked on her door. "Do you have a moment?" he asked. Kendra was surprised. Preston usually avoided direct interaction with her, communicating through Elliot or formal emails. "Sure," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Preston sat down, and for the first time, Kendra saw him look truly uncomfortable. Not just professionally uncomfortable, personally uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology," Preston said without preamble. "A real one, not a business apology, a human one." Kendra set down her pen and waited. "4 years ago, I treated you abominably," Preston continued. "I judged you based on nothing but prejudice and snobbery. I made assumptions about who you were and what you were capable of based solely on your background, and I was catastrophically wrong." "Yes, you were," Kendra said simply. "I told myself I was protecting my son, protecting my family legacy, but really, I was just protecting my own narrow worldview. I couldn't accept that someone like you, someone who didn't fit my limited definition of appropriate, could be exactly what Darius needed, what our family needed." Preston looked down at his hands. "Darius hasn't forgiven me, you know. He moved to Edinburgh partly to get away from me. We barely speak, and I know it's because of how I treated you." "That's between you and your son," Kendra said. "I know, but I wanted you to understand. I didn't just hurt you that day. I hurt my own family. I damaged my relationship with my son because I was too proud and too stupid to see past my own biases." Kendra felt something unexpected, pity. Preston Wellington, the man who'd wielded his power and wealth like weapons against her, looked diminished now, older, humbled by the consequences of his own actions. "Why are you telling me this?" Kendra asked. "Because you deserve to hear it. Because you've saved my company, transformed it into something better than it ever was, and I owe you more than just your consulting fee. I owe you the acknowledgement that you were right and I was wrong about everything that matters." Preston stood up. "I won't take up more of your time. I just wanted to say that, and to thank you, not just for the business success but for showing me how destructive my thinking was." He walked to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Darius was an idiot to let you go, but I was a bigger idiot for making him think he had to choose." After Preston left, Kendra sat in the quiet office, processing the conversation. It wasn't the triumphant revenge she'd once imagined. There was no public humiliation, no dramatic confrontation where she got to throw his words back at him. Just a tired old man admitting he'd been wrong. And somehow that felt like enough. 3 weeks later, Kendra was in London for a board meeting at Pierce Porter Investments when Tasha burst into her office looking uncharacteristically flustered. "You need to see this," Tasha said, pulling up a news article on her tablet. The headline read, "Wellington Holdings reports record quarterly profits under new leadership." But that wasn't what had Tasha excited. Below the article was a press release from Wellington Holdings. It announced that the company was creating a new division, Wellington Inclusive Investments, focused specifically on funding minority-owned businesses and diverse entrepreneurs. The press release quoted Preston Wellington. "Thanks to the vision of consultant Kendra Pierce, Wellington Holdings has learned that the future of business lies in embracing diversity, not excluding it. We're putting our money where our mouth is by creating this new division dedicated to investing in the talented entrepreneurs we've overlooked for too long." And then, the part that made Kendra's breath catch. "We're pleased to announce that the division will be led by Elliot Wellington, in partnership with Pierce Porter Investments. A portion of Wellington Holdings' annual profits will be dedicated to this initiative in perpetuity. Kendra looked up at Tasha. Did you know about this? Elliot called me last week, said he had a proposal. I didn't realize it would be this big. They're basically giving us a permanent partnership and funding it with their own money. Is this weird? Tasha asked. I can't tell if this is weird. Kendra read the press release again. It was weird. It was completely unexpected. The Wellingtons weren't just accepting her help, they were adopting her entire philosophy, making it part of their company's DNA. We should call Elliot, Kendra said. Figure out exactly what they're proposing. But even as she said it, Kendra felt something shift in her chest. For 4 years, she'd been driven by the need to prove Preston Wellington wrong, to show that she was more than what he'd thought of her. And now, he was literally building a company division around the belief that he'd been wrong, that her way was the right way. She'd won, not just professionally but ideologically. She'd changed the mind of a man who'd seemed unchangeable. It was the most complete victory she could have imagined. And she hadn't even had to destroy anyone to get it. Kendra stood in the lobby of Wellington Holdings' Manchester headquarters, looking up at the newly installed wall display. It showcased the company's new vision, photos of diverse employees, quotes about inclusion and innovation, statistics about the company's transformation over the past year. One quote in particular caught her eye, attributed to Preston Wellington. True wealth isn't measured in what you inherit, but in what you build. And the greatest thing we can build is opportunity for others. Strange to see those words from him, isn't it? Kendra turned to find Elliot Wellington approaching, carrying 2 coffee cups. He handed her one. I didn't know you were coming in today, Kendra said. I wanted to talk to you about the Inclusive Investments Partnership before tomorrow's formal announcement, Elliot said. Make sure you're actually on board and not just being polite. They walked to a quiet seating area in the lobby. Outside the windows, Manchester went about its business under gray morning skis. Why did you do this? Kendra asked. The new division, the partnership, it's generous beyond anything required by our consulting contract. Elliot took a sip of coffee, considering his words. Because you showed us we were wrong. Not just wrong about business strategy, but wrong about fundamental things. Who deserves opportunity? What makes someone valuable? How to actually create lasting success. That's very diplomatic. I'm serious. Elliot leaned forward. I grew up in a bubble, Kendra. Everyone around me looked like me, thought like me, came from the same world. I never questioned it. Then you came along and forced us to see what we'd been missing. All the talent we'd overlooked. All the opportunities we'd squandered because we were too narrow-minded to recognize them. Your father sees it that way too. He does now. It took him longer. He's more set in his ways. But even he admits that what you've built is better than what we had before. Kendra watched people moving through the lobby. She recognized some of them, new hires she'd brought in. People who would never have gotten through the door of Wellington Holdings under the old regime. What about Darius? She asked, surprising herself. Elliot's expression turned somber. What about him? The press release didn't mention him. Is he part of this new direction? Darius is complicated. He knows what we're doing. He supports it from what I understand, but he's kept his distance from the family business. Because of me. Because of what happened with you, yes, but also because of Dad. They had a massive fight after you left. Darius blamed Dad for driving you away. Dad blamed Darius for being weak and letting you go. Neither of them has really forgiven the other. Kendra felt an unexpected pang of guilt. She'd imagined the Wellingtons as a united front, a monolithic force of privilege and prejudice. She hadn't considered that her departure might have fractured the family itself. That wasn't my fault, she said, more to herself than to Elliot. No, it wasn't, Elliot agreed. It was Dad's fault and Darius's. They both made choices. You just forced them to live with the consequences. Is Darius happy in Edinburgh? I think so. He's building something real, a small investment firm focused on ethical investing. It's not as grand as Wellington Holdings, but it's his. He's not living in Dad's shadow anymore. Good, Kendra said and meant it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Elliot said, "There's something else I need to tell you about the partnership announcement tomorrow." "What?" "Darius is coming. Dad invited him. Dad wants to make the announcement a family reconciliation moment, showing that we've all learned from our mistakes and moved forward together." Kendra's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Elliot, I don't think." "I know. I told Dad it was a bad idea, but he's convinced that having Darius there, publicly supporting the new direction, will show the business world that the Wellingtons are serious about change." "And what does Darius think about this?" "He agreed to come. I think he wants to see you, actually." Kendra's heart did something complicated in her chest. She hadn't seen Darius in 4 years. She'd built an entire new life, become an entirely different person. The girl who'd loved him felt like someone from a past life. But apparently, Darius was still there, in some corner of her mind where unfinished business lived. "I can't promise it won't be awkward," Kendra said. Elliot smiled. "I'm counting on it being awkward. Might make the press conference more interesting." Kendra spent the rest of the day preparing for the announcement, pushing thoughts of Darius aside to focus on the details of the partnership. Malcolm flew in from London to attend, as did several members of Pierce Porter's senior team. That evening, back in her hotel room, Kendra video called Tasha. "How are you holding up?" Tasha asked, her face filling the screen. "I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be fine?" "Because tomorrow you're going to see the man who broke your heart, the father who paid you to leave, and the family that humiliated you, all while announcing a business partnership that ties you to them indefinitely." "When you put it that way, it does sound stressful," Kendra admitted, flopping back on the hotel bed. "Have you thought about what you're going to say if Darius tries to talk to you?" "I haven't thought about it at all, which is probably a mistake." "Do you still have feelings for him?" Kendra stared at the ceiling, considering the question honestly. "I don't know. I loved who I thought he was, but that person might not have ever really existed. The real Darius let his parents control him, let them pay me off, chose their approval over our relationship. People change, though. Elliot said Darius stood up to his dad after you left." 4 years too late, after I'd already left, after the damage was done, Kendra sighed. "I don't hate him, Tash, but I don't know if I can forgive him either. And I definitely don't know if seeing him tomorrow is going to bring back feelings I thought I'd buried." "Want me to fly up there? I can be in Manchester by midnight." "No," Kendra said, smiling at her friend's loyalty. "I need to do this myself. Besides, it's just a press conference. How bad could it be?" The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Wellington Holdings' main conference center. Kendra arrived early, going over her remarks one more time while technicians set up cameras and microphones. Preston arrived looking distinguished in a navy suit. Elliot was with him, looking more nervous than Kendra had ever seen him. "Everything's ready," Elliot said. "The press is assembling. We're expecting good turnout. This partnership is big news in the UK business world." "Where's?" Kendra started to ask, then stopped herself. "Darius is running late," Preston said, checking his phone. "Traffic from Edinburgh, he'll be here." Kendra told herself she didn't care. That seeing Darius or not seeing him made no difference to her professional responsibilities today. She was lying, of course. Malcolm squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "You've got this. This is your victory lap, remember. Everything else is just noise." At 9:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the press conference was set to begin, the conference room doors opened. And Darius Wellington walked in. Kendra's breath caught in her throat. He looked older, not dramatically different, but there were subtle changes. His dark hair was shorter, more professional. He'd grown a neat beard. He wore a well-tailored charcoal suit, but his brown eyes, those were the same. Still warm, still expressive, still capable of making Kendra's heart do things she'd rather it didn't. Their eyes met across the conference room. For a moment, neither of them moved. The 4 years collapsed. Kendra was suddenly 27 again, sitting in that Manchester coffee shop, watching her future crumble. Then Preston cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "Darius, thank you for coming." "Dad," Darius said, his voice carefully neutral. Then turning to Kendra, "Hello, Kendra." Darius. So formal, so distant, so completely unlike the way they'd once been with each other. "We should start," Elliot said, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the room. "The press is ready." The press conference went smoothly, at least professionally. Preston announced the new Inclusive Investments Division, praised Kendra's role in transforming Wellington Holdings, and outlined the partnership with Pierce Porter Investments. Kendra gave her remarks, focusing on the business case for diversity and the opportunities the partnership would create. She was confident, articulate, every inch the successful CEO. When it came time for questions from the press, most were about the financial details and strategy. But then a reporter from the Manchester Evening News asked the question Kendra had been dreading. "Ms. Pierce, is it true that you used to date Preston Wellington's son, and that the relationship ended badly?" The room fell silent. Kendra glanced at Preston, who looked mortified. Elliot looked ready to tackle the reporter. Darius stared down at his hands. "Yes," Kendra said simply. "Darius Wellington and I were in a relationship several years ago. It ended. But this partnership has nothing to do with personal history. It's about business, about creating opportunities, about building something meaningful." Next question. Another reporter. "But doesn't the personal history create a conflict of interest? How can we trust that this partnership is based on merit rather than complicated personal dynamics?" Before Kendra could respond, Darius stood up. "I'd like to address that," he said, his voice carrying across the room. Preston looked alarmed. Elliot grabbed his brother's arm, but Darius gently pulled away and walked to the microphone. "4 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life," Darius said, looking directly at Kendra. "I let my family pressure me into ending a relationship with an extraordinary woman. I was weak. I chose their approval over her, and I've regretted it every day since." Kendra felt her carefully constructed composure begin to crack. "But here's what that mistake taught me," Darius continued. "It taught me that the only thing that matters is doing what you know is right, regardless of what anyone else thinks, which is why I left Wellington Holdings, why I built my own firm based on my own values, and why I'm here today supporting this partnership." He turned to face the press. "Kendra Pierce is the most talented businessperson I've ever known. She saved Wellington Holdings when it was failing. She changed my father's worldview, which, believe me, is harder than it sounds. And she did all of it not because of me, not because of our past, but because she's brilliant and driven and refuses to accept limitations that other people try to place on her." Darius looked at his father. "Dad, I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you admitted you were wrong, that you let Kendra show you a better way. That takes courage." Then he looked at Kendra, and his eyes held everything he wasn't saying. "And Kendra, I'm sorry, for being weak when I should have been strong, for letting you down when you needed me most. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." The room was absolutely silent. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes frantically. Kendra stood frozen, torn between wanting to hug Darius and wanting to slap him for doing this publicly, for making her feel things she didn't want to feel. Preston stood up, putting a hand on his son's shoulder. "That was, well said, Darius, thank you." The press conference concluded shortly after. As reporters filed out and technicians broke down equipment, Kendra found herself alone with the Wellington men, Preston, Elliot, and Darius. "That was not part of the plan," Preston said to Darius. "I know, but it needed to be said." "Can I talk to you?" Darius asked Kendra. "Alone." Kendra looked at Malcolm, who nodded subtly. She could handle this. "5 minutes," she said. They went to a small conference room down the hall. Darius closed the door, and suddenly they were alone for the first time in 4 years. You look incredible, Darius said. I mean, you always looked incredible, but now you look powerful, successful, happy. I am those things, Kendra said. No thanks to you. Darius flinched but nodded. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that, honestly. Why did you do that? The public apology. That wasn't necessary for the partnership. I know, but it was necessary for me. I've carried the guilt of what I did to you for 4 years, Kendra. I needed you to know that I know I was wrong, that I've spent every day since you left wishing I could go back and do things differently. You can't go back, Kendra said. None of us can. I know, but maybe we could go forward, not romantically, he added quickly, seeing her expression. I'm not asking for that, I don't deserve that, but maybe we could be friends, eventually. Kendra studied him. This older, seemingly wiser version of the man she'd once loved. He'd grown up, apparently, learned from his mistakes, built something of his own instead of living in his father's shadow. But did that erase the hurt? Did personal growth excuse past weakness? I don't know, Kendra said honestly. You broke my heart, Darius. You let your parents treat me like garbage and you stood by and let it happen. And when it was over, you didn't even have the courage to break up with me yourself. You let them do that too. I was a coward. Yes, you were. I'm not anymore, or I'm trying not to be. Kendra looked at him, really looked at him. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine regret. But she could also see something else. He was hopping for absolution. Hopping that by apologizing, by admitting his mistakes, she would magically forgive him and they could move forward like nothing had happened. But that's not how healing worked. I appreciate the apology, Kendra said carefully, and I'm glad you've grown as a person, but I'm not ready to be your friend, Darius. Maybe someday, but not today. Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. I understand, and Kendra, for what it's worth, I never stopped low. Don't, Kendra interrupted. Don't say it, because it doesn't matter anymore. Whatever we had, whatever we might have been, that's gone. I'm a different person now. You're a different person. Those 2 people who dated in Manchester, they don't exist anymore. Right, of course, Darius stepped back. I'll let you get back to your team, but thank you for listening. He moved toward the door, then paused. You really did save my family's company, you know. And in doing that, you saved my family. My relationship with my father was destroyed after you left. But seeing him work with you, seeing him actually change his views and admit he was wrong, it's the first time in years we've been able to have a real conversation. I didn't do it for your family, Kendra said. I did it for the 2,000 employees who would have lost their jobs if Wellington Holdings failed. I know, which makes it even more impressive. After Darius left, Kendra stood in the empty conference room, processing everything that had just happened. She'd seen him, heard his apology, felt the pull of old feelings trying to resurface. And she'd walked away anyway. Because she'd meant what she said to him. Those people who'd dated 4 years ago didn't exist anymore. She wasn't the insecure young woman desperate to fit into his world. And he wasn't the weak man who'd let his family control his life. They were different people now, and maybe that was okay. 6 months after the press conference, Kendra stood in the newly opened offices of Wellington Inclusive Investments. The division she'd helped create was thriving. 20 employees, 40 diverse businesses in their portfolio, and a reputation as the most exciting new player in UK venture capital. Elliot ran the day-to-day operations with passion and skill. He'd proven himself to be genuinely committed to the mission, not just using it as a PR move. Today was the division's official launch party. Investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders filled the modern office space. Kendra moved through the crowd, shaking hands, making connections, enjoying the fruits of her labor. Quite a turnout, Malcolm said, appearing at her elbow with champagne flutes. He handed her one. You should be proud. We should be proud, Kendra corrected. This was a team effort. But you were the catalyst. None of this happens without you walking into that Wellington estate 4 years ago and refusing to stay buried. Tasha joined them looking sharp in a burgundy dress. Speech time. Elliot's about to introduce you. Kendra made her way to the small stage at one end of the office. Elliot was already there, microphone in hand. Thank you all for coming, Elliot said. Today marks the official launch of Wellington Inclusive Investments, a division dedicated to funding the talented entrepreneurs that traditional firms overlook. This initiative wouldn't exist without one person, someone who showed Wellington Holdings that our greatest asset isn't our name or our history, but our willingness to evolve. Please welcome Kendra Pierce. Applause filled the room as Kendra took the microphone. Thank you, Elliot. 4 years ago, I was a young woman sitting in this city feeling like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't belong in rooms filled with powerful people, like my background, my appearance, my story somehow disqualified me from success. She looked around the room, seeing diverse faces watching her intently. I was wrong, and more importantly, the people who made me feel that way were wrong, because success isn't about where you come from, it's about where you're going. It's about the work you put in, the vision you have, and the courage to keep pushing forward when people tell you that you can't. Kendra's voice grew stronger. Wellington Inclusive Investments exists because I refused to accept that my story was over, because I turned humiliation into motivation, because I proved that the only person who gets to define my worth is me. She paused, letting her words sink in. And now we're going to make sure that other people, other entrepreneurs who are told they're not good enough, not connected enough, not right enough, get the same chance I got, to prove everyone wrong, to build something real, to succeed on their own terms. The room erupted in applause. As Kendra stepped off the stage, she saw Preston Wellington standing near the back of the room. He caught her eye and raised his champagne glass in a silent toast. She nodded back. There was no dramatic confrontation, no moment where she got to gloat about her victory, just a mutual acknowledgement. You were wrong, I was right, and we all moved forward. Later that night, after the party had wound down and most guests had left, Kendra found herself on the office balcony overlooking Manchester. The city lights stretched out before her, the same city where she'd once felt so small and lost. Mind if I join you? Kendra turned to find Darius standing in the doorway. He wore a simple black suit, his beard neatly trimmed. He looked different from the man at the press conference 6 months ago, more settled, more at peace. I didn't know you were coming, Kendra said. Elliot invited me, said I should see what the division had become. Darius stepped onto the balcony, keeping a respectful distance. It's impressive, Kendra, really impressive. Thank you. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city. I've been doing therapy, Darius said suddenly, working through a lot of things, understanding why I made the choices I made, why I was so desperate for my father's approval that I sacrificed my own happiness, and yours. That's good, everyone should do therapy. My therapist asked me what I would say to you if I had the chance, if I could really explain myself. And I realized, I don't think I can. There's no explanation that makes what I did okay. I was weak when you needed me to be strong. I chose comfort over courage, and I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. Kendra looked at him. Are you telling me this hopping I'll say it's okay, that I forgive you? No, I'm telling you because you deserve to hear it. You deserve to know that losing you was the wake-up call I needed. That everything good in my life now, the firm I built, the relationship I've repaired with my father, the person I've become, it all started with the guilt and regret of letting you go. I'm glad you grew from it, Kendra said sincerely. I really am, but Darius, I need you to understand something. Your growth doesn't obligate me to give you another chance. Your apologies don't erase the hurt. You getting better doesn't mean we get to go back. I know, I'm not asking for that. Then what are you asking for? Darius looked out at the city. Permission to stop feeling guilty, to know that you're happy, that you've moved on, that I didn't permanently damage you. Kendra felt something release in her chest, because that's what this had always been about, hadn't it? Not about whether she could forgive him, but whether he could forgive himself. "You didn't damage me," Kendra said firmly. "You hurt me, but I healed, I grew. I became someone stronger because of what I went through. You and your family tried to make me feel worthless, and instead you motivated me to prove my worth. So no, Darius, you didn't damage me. If anything, you freed me to become who I was always meant to be." Darius's eyes glistened. "Thank you, that means more than you know. And for the record, I am happy, I'm successful, I'm surrounded by people who value me. I don't spend my nights crying over you anymore. I don't even think about you most days. You're just a chapter in my story, not the whole story." "Good, that's good." They stood together on the balcony for a few more minutes. Two people who'd once been everything to each other, now just friendly strangers with a shared history. Finally, Darius said, "I should go, but Kendra, I'm proud of you for everything you've accomplished, for who you've become." "Thank you, and Darius, I hope you find happiness, real happiness, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval." "I'm working on it." After he left, Kendra stayed on the balcony a while longer, processing the conversation. She thought seeing Darius again would bring back all the pain, all the anger, but instead she just felt peaceful, like a door that had been left slightly ajar was finally fully closed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tasha, "Coming back inside, or are you having a main character moment out there?" Kendra smiled, "Coming in, save me some champagne." She took one last look at Manchester, the city where she'd been broken and rebuilt, then went back inside to her team, her friends, her success. 2 years after the launch of Wellington Inclusive Investments, Kendra Pierce stood on stage at a major international business conference in New York. She'd been invited as a keynote speaker to discuss inclusive investing and corporate transformation. The audience was enormous, thousands of business leaders from around the world, and Kendra commanded the stage with confidence earned through years of proving herself. "Let me tell you a story," she began, "about a young woman who was told she wasn't good enough, who was paid to disappear, who was judged not by her abilities or her character, but by her background and her appearance." She paused, letting the tension build. That woman could have taken the money and faded away, could have accepted the narrative that she didn't belong in rooms with powerful people, could have let other people's limitations become her own. But she didn't. She turned that money into seed capital. She built a business. She proved that the only person who gets to define your worth is you, and eventually, the very people who tried to dismiss her came back begging for her help. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. That woman was me. And I'm telling you this story not to brag about my success, but to remind you of something crucial. The people who underestimate you are often the ones standing in their own way. They're so committed to their narrow view of the world that they can't see the opportunities right in front of them. Kendra's voice grew stronger. Your job, whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or a business leader, is to look for the talent and potential that others overlook. To understand that different backgrounds bring different perspectives. To know that the next great business mind might not look like the last one, might not talk like you, might not come from the right family or go to the right school. And if you're someone who's been underestimated, if you're someone who's been told you're not good enough, don't believe them. Use their doubt as fuel. Build something they can't ignore. Succeed so loudly that their opinions become irrelevant. The audience erupted in applause. After the speech, Kendra was surrounded by people wanting to talk, to network, to pitch ideas. Among them, she noticed a young black woman waiting patiently at the edge of the crowd. When the throng finally cleared, the woman approached nervously. "Ms. Pierce, I'm Jasmine. I'm a first-generation college student from Detroit. I just started my own consulting firm, and everyone keeps telling me I'm too young, too inexperienced, that I don't have the right connections." She paused, gathering courage. "But then I heard your story, and I realized that maybe being underestimated is actually an advantage, because when people don't expect you to succeed, they don't see you coming." Kendra smiled, seeing herself in this young woman's determination. You're absolutely right. They won't see you coming. And by the time they realize how good you are, you'll already be winning. She pulled out a business card. Call my office next week. Let's talk about your firm. Maybe there's a way Pierce Porter Investments can help. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. Actually, Kendra said, thinking back to a younger version of herself crying in a Manchester flat, I do. I know exactly what it means. That evening, Kendra had dinner with her mother at a restaurant in Brooklyn. Her mother, Diane Pierce, was a strong woman with dark brown skin and gray-streaked natural hair, who still worked at the same grocery store she'd been at for 20 years. Look at you, Diane said, pride shining in her eyes. My baby girl on stages in front of thousands of people, speaking at conferences, running a company. Sometimes I can't believe it. I learned from the best, Kendra said, squeezing her mother's hand. You learn to work hard, yes, but everything else, that drive, that determination, that's all you, baby. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. When I first called you from Manchester after the Wellingtons paid me off, you told me to take the money and come home, but then you said something else. Do you remember? Diane smiled. I said, baby, you can come home, but don't come home defeated. Come home planning your next move. That's what changed everything for me. Realizing that accepting their money didn't mean accepting their judgment. That I could take what they meant as an ending and turn it into a beginning. You always were stubborn, Diane said fondly. Even as a little girl. If someone told you that you couldn't do something, that just made you more determined to do it. I get that from you. Damn right you do. They laughed together, and Kendra felt a wave of gratitude for this woman who'd raised her with such strength and wisdom. Mom, I want you to retire. I can afford it now. You don't need to keep working at that store. Diane waved her hand dismissively. I like my job, I like the people. Besides, what would I do all day if I retired? Sit around watching TV? No thank you. You could travel, come visit me in London, see the world. Maybe I will, but on my own terms when I'm ready. Don't try to manage me, Kendra Pierce. I'm still your mother. Yes, ma'am. 3 months later, Kendra received an unexpected email. The subject line read, From Darius Wellington. She almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won. Kendra, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to let you know that I'm getting married. Her name is Sarah, and she's wonderful. She's a teacher, completely outside the business world, and she doesn't care about any of the Wellington name or history. I wanted you to hear it from me, rather than seeing it in the press or through Elliot. I also wanted to say thank you. I know that sounds strange, but meeting you, losing you, learning from that loss, it made me the person I needed to be to find real happiness. You taught me what real strength looks like, what real integrity looks like. I hope you're thriving. From what I hear, you certainly are. Pierce Porter Investments is doing incredible work. Take care. Darius. Kendra read the email twice, then she replied. Darius. Congratulations on your engagement. I'm happy for you, genuinely. Thank you for letting me know. And you're welcome, I suppose, though I can't take credit for your growth. You did that work yourself. I am thriving. Life is good. I wish you and Sarah all the best. Kendra. She hit send and closed her laptop, and realized with some surprise that she really did wish him well. The anger that had fueled her for so long had finally, completely burned out. In its place was just peace. 5 years after leaving Manchester with a check for £200,000, Kendra Pierce stood in the penthouse apartment she'd just purchased in London. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the Thames and the city beyond. Tasha was helping her unpack, pulling decorative items from boxes and placing them around the space. This place is insane, Tasha said. Remember when we lived in that tiny flat in Levenshulme with the radiator that barely worked? How could I forget? You complained about it every single day. For good reason, I could see my breath inside the apartment, but look at us now. Tasha gestured at the luxurious space, living our best lives. Malcolm arrived carrying wine and Chinese takeout. Housewarming gifts, he announced, though I suspect you can now afford your own wine. But can I afford your friendship? Kendra teased. Not even close, I'm priceless. They settled on the living room floor, eating takeout straight from the containers like they used to in the early days of Pierce Porter Investments. Should we toast? Malcolm suggested, raising his wine glass. To what? Kendra asked. To proving them wrong, Tasha said. To building something real, Malcolm added. To not letting anyone else define your worth, Kendra finished. They clinked glasses and drank. Later, after Malcolm and Tasha had left, Kendra stood by the windows looking out at London. Her phone buzzed with a notification, an article about Pierce Porter Investments being named one of the top investment firms in the UK for the third year running. She thought about Preston Wellington, about that day in his study when he'd called her not good enough. She wondered if he ever thought about that conversation, if he ever regretted not just the cruelty of his words, but the short-sightedness of his judgment. Probably not. People like Preston rarely thought that deeply about the people they hurt. But it didn't matter anymore, because Kendra had built a life that had nothing to do with his opinion of her. She'd succeeded not to spite him, but because she'd refused to let anyone's limitations become her own. Her phone rang, an unknown number with a Manchester area code. Hello? Ms. Pierce, this is Victoria Wellington, Preston's wife. Kendra felt her body tense. She hadn't spoken to Victoria since that awful day 4 years ago. Mrs. Wellington, this is unexpected. I'm sure it is. I wanted to call because I owe you an apology, a real one, not the kind that Preston gave at the press conference, but a personal one, from me to you. Kendra sat down surprised. Okay. I was cruel to you, Victoria said, her British accent as crisp as ever but her voice softer. I judged you without knowing you. I said terrible things about your family, your background. I treated you like you were somehow less than because you didn't come from wealth. And I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Why are you calling me now? Because my daughter, you never met her, Sloane. She just graduated from university. She wants to start a business, and she's struggling because investors won't take her seriously. They see a young woman, they see the Wellington name and assume she's just playing at business with daddy's money. Victoria paused, and I finally understood. I finally saw what we did to you, how we dismissed you based on factors that had nothing to do with your abilities, and I realized what a hypocrite I was. Kendra didn't know what to say. I'm not calling to ask for anything, Victoria continued. I'm certainly not asking you to meet with Sloane, though she does admire you tremendously. I'm calling because you deserved an apology from me, one that acknowledges that I was a snob and a bully, and that you've shown more grace in your success than I ever showed in mine. Thank you, Kendra said finally, for calling, for saying that. You're welcome, and Kendra, I'm sorry, truly deeply sorry. After Victoria hung up, Kendra sat in her apartment processing the conversation. The Wellingtons kept surprising her. They'd gone from villains to clients to, what? Allies, friends. She wasn't sure. But she did know this. They'd changed, really changed, and in some small way she'd been the catalyst for that change. That felt good. 10 years after leaving Manchester, Kendra Pierce published a book, Good Enough: How Being Underestimated Became My Greatest Asset. The book became an international bestseller. It told her story, the humiliation, the heartbreak, the determination to prove everyone wrong. But more than that, it told the stories of dozens of other entrepreneurs who'd been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated, and how they'd turned that adversity into success. The book launch was held at a major bookstore in London. Hundreds of people attended. Among them, sitting in the back row, was Elliot Wellington with his wife and 2 children. After the reading and Q&A, Elliot approached Kendra at the signing table. Incredible book, he said. I couldn't put it down. Thank you. I didn't expect to see you here. I wouldn't have missed it. Kendra, I want you to know, working with you changed my life. You showed me what real leadership looks like, what real values look like. My kids are growing up in a different world than I did, partly because of what you taught me. That's the best compliment I could receive. Elliot hesitated, then said, Dad wanted to come tonight, but he thought it might be awkward, but he did want me to give you this. He handed Kendra an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on Preston Wellington's personal stationery. Dear Kendra, congratulations on your book. I read it cover to cover in one sitting. It was painful to read the chapter about how my family treated you. Seeing my own cruelty reflected back at me through your words was humbling in a way I can't fully express. You were right about everything. I was a prejudiced, narrow-minded fool who nearly destroyed my own company because I couldn't see past my own biases. But more than that, I failed as a human being. I hurt a young woman who deserved kindness and respect. I prioritized status and tradition over decency. I will never forgive myself for that, but I'm grateful that you didn't let my failure become yours, that you took the worst moment of your life and transformed it into a story of resilience and triumph. I hope someday you can truly forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because you deserve to be free of any lingering hurt I caused. With profound respect and regret, Preston Wellington. Kendra folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. She'd never expected this, real, genuine remorse from the man who'd once seemed incapable of seeing her as human. Tell your father thank you, Kendra said to Elliot, and tell him I do forgive him, not for his sake but for mine, because I don't want to carry anger anymore. I want to carry hope. Elliot smiled. I'll tell him, he'll be glad to hear it. On the final page of Good Enough, Kendra had written, This book is dedicated to everyone who's been told they're not enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not connected enough, not the right kind of person for success. You are enough, you always were. The people who try to make you feel small are themselves small. Don't let their limitations become yours. Take their doubt and transform it into fuel. Take their dismissal and turn it into determination. Take their check and build an empire. Because the best revenge isn't making them regret what they did to you. The best revenge is becoming so successful, so happy, so fulfilled that what they did to you becomes irrelevant. You are good enough, now go prove it. The lesson to be learnt from this story. The people who underestimate you don't define your worth. You do. When someone tries to make you feel inferior, remember that their judgment says more about their limitations than yours. The greatest success isn't making your critics apologize. It's building a life so full and meaningful that their opinions become irrelevant. Don't waste your energy on revenge. Invest it in becoming undeniable. True victory isn't about destroying those who hurt you. It's about growing beyond them, building something real, and proving that your value was never dependent on their approval. When someone pays you to disappear, take the money and reappear as someone they can't ignore. Not because you need their validation, but because you validated yourself. And sometimes, the best outcome isn't getting the apology you deserve, but no longer needing it. If Kendra's story inspired you, help us inspire others. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that like button. Drop a comment sharing your own not good enough moment and how you overcame it. Share this story with someone who's facing their own Wellingtons, whether that's a toxic family, a discriminatory boss, or anyone who tried to make them feel small. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning. Thank you for watching.